Catherine McGregor in Canberra and Nicholas Reece in Melbourne. Pretty impressive stuff, Nicholas. I know you're going to pick apart all sorts of aspects of this, but what an impressive event. The staging at the White House and the speaking for an hour and, of course, all the preliminaries. It was just a magical political theatre.
Look, Americans do political theatre very well, don't they? Whether it was the Democrat convention or the Republican convention, the oratory soars. It is quite a spectacle, and, you know, it's a credit to the US that they do them so well. I wonder, do they come out of a box like that, being able to soar so high with the things they say and their turn of phrase? Look, I thought there was some good moments in this convention for the Republicans. I thought some of the speeches by average Americans telling their stories about, you know, why they'd be voting for Trump again were actually quite poignant and quite powerful. I do think, well, I personally have a problem with Trump using the White House as the backdrop for his campaign speech. But look, I'm a person who believes in, you know, important rules around governing. I would be the first to concede that probably most American voters don't see the big problem with it. But I'm sure, Chris, you understand the issues there. Look, in terms of the speech, I thought it went for too long, to be honest with you. I thought Biden did very well the other week, going for, I think it was 26 minutes. I think in the era of broadcast and online media, that was about right. I thought that, you know, it was full of Trump's usual boastful claims, and the fact checkers are going to have a field day with it. But I think the big problem for him is just what's going on with the coronavirus and the fact that, you know, they've had 180,000 deaths, higher by far than any other country in the world, and their economy's in deep trouble as a result. That was meant to be his strong suit.
Get into a Donald Trump, Jonathan Swan argument here, but it's by no means the highest death rate per million. I mean, it's got the biggest population, the highest, but countries like the UK, France, Italy, Spain, they all have higher death rates per population. But let's get back on to this climax, Catherine. The focus on law and order, I think, is fascinating because the Democrats are supporting all these protests, I suppose, and saying, you know, you've got to elect us to stop this and reunite the country, whereas Donald Trump is saying, look at this now. You think it's bad now? The whole country will be like this under the soft hand of the Democrats.
Yeah, look, he had a good convention. I think unconditionally on two fronts, Chris. One, he did frame that law and order issue as a key central plank, and his opponents played into his hands. That was reprehensible, watching an Afghanistan veteran who's been elected to Congress going past that vile abuse, a man who's sacrificed 2 limbs in the service of his country. If that doesn't make its way into a commercial from one of the conservative political action committees, I will be stunned. And secondly, just the energy level of the event. The whole Zoom running scared from the virus message out of Biden and his cohort was all very cute, all very sterile. And Trump looks like a person who is willing to get on with the job. And the energy level that was conveyed, I think, one sends some hope. Whether the claims about a vaccine by the end of the year and so on are sustainable, he's offering some hope, and he really has framed it as a law and order election, and he sheeted home directly to those local Democrat administrations in very key states the responsibility for no-go areas and defunding the police. Now, Trump's vote notoriously doesn't show up in the polls because people have been somewhat shamed into silence and so forth. And the noise on Twitter is not indicative of the real world. So I'll be curious to see where this race goes after Labor Day, as I said last week. But he's given himself every chance, in my view, both in defining the nature of what is at stake and in conveying energy and authority and looking 100% more lively than his opponent.
Yeah, Nicholas, this is one of the big problems because the Democrats were so virtual and Biden has been so bunkered, and it's all about masks and social distancing. The Democrats and the media have been criticising the whole Republican convention, too many people mingling, not enough masks. But this goes to the big issue that you talked about, the pandemic. It, of course, is a massive issue in the election campaign. But Trump is saying, you know, we've got to deal with it, we've got to live with it and try and get the country moving again. The Democrats are taking a big risk, basically, Daniel Andrews style, saying, no, let's bunker down and wait for help.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Trump put a huge electronic billboard on the front of the South Lawn saying vote Trump Pence, that's one issue. Then allowing hundreds, if not thousands of people to gather to hear his speech, in contravention of good social distancing practice is another thing again. And to the extent that that communicates a message about him being perhaps irresponsible, even reckless around his response to COVID-19, I do think that does have the potential to bite with voters. Just picking up Catherine's point, though, I do also expect that polls will tighten now. They just will as you get closer to the election date. But on that fundamental question of is America better or worse off because of the Trump presidency, I think there's too many people in the US now saying they're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question because, of course, pre-pandemic, that question would have been very favourable for Donald Trump, Catherine. So it's about the way people assess the impact of the pandemic, whether you can get back on that trajectory and how much of the blame for the pandemic is attached to Donald Trump.
Yeah, look, Nicholas hits on a key indicator. There's that right track, wrong track number is always the lag indicator, the leading indicator.
Yep.
In that, when James Carville looked at George Bush, the senior, the late George Bush, he had a popularity personal approval rating of 91% after the first Gulf War, but there was a 54% the country is on the wrong track number underpinning that. And it was all due to the onset of recession. And of course, we're dealing with eye-watering economic problems there now. And a lot of Trump's original message was about optimism. But I think he did put the case together to say, look, we've been mugged by this virus, and he sheeted that home to China. And that's not actually a rhetorical flourish, it's the truth.
Yep.
And he looks, again, I think, better equipped to deal with China than his opponent. So I think by saying there's a life after this thing, who do you want to go out the other side with? I think he's given himself a real chance. He
has given himself a shot. I think it's the core argument you've both touched on here, Nicholas, because any time over the past few months, most Americans would have said they're going in the wrong direction. I can't wait to get over there and talk to more of them directly myself. But if you have infections going down now and economic activity going up, even as tenuous as both of those things are, a lot of people will be tempted to stick with Trump to perhaps get out of here.
Yeah, look, if those infection numbers can come down and then the central issue of the campaign becomes, OK, who's best for managing the economy as we, come back, then Trump's in with a real chance. But I was listening to a report earlier this week by Democrat strategists, and they were saying when they run focus groups, the line they've got, which really resonates, is they say Trump didn't cause the coronavirus, but he has made it worse. It's that apparently the heads are just nodding in the groups around that, and so the Democrats are really locking on that point. And so Trump says, the worst of coronavirus is behind us, but those numbers are still extraordinarily high. And so if that carries into November, I think just on basic performance grounds around the coronavirus, he's in a lot of trouble.
Now, I hope you both have a good weekend. It's great to talk to you again, but here's something I very seldom say about a weekend in footy season, and that is I'd much rather be in Canberra than Melbourne. See you later.
It's looking decent this weekend, Chris, but I tell you what, you wouldn't have wanted to be here 2 mornings ago.
I heard it was Brass Monkey earlier this week. Good to talk to you both. Talk to you next week.
Salt in my wounds, Chris. Okay. Salt in my wounds.
Nicholas Reece and Catherine McGregor, always great to talk to them at the end of the week.